From downtown Scranton, this is Northeast Current. WQPX invites you to join us as we explore public affairs, current events, and arts and culture in northeastern and central Pennsylvania. Now let's meet today's guests on Northeast Current.
Welcome to Northeast Current. I'm your host today, Jeannine Luby, and joining me in the studio we have Mr. Irwin Sagenkahn, who is the author of the book Coal Dust is White. Well, welcome today, Irwin. It's so nice to have you here.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
This is you have a really interesting story, not just the book being interesting, but the story of writing the book is really interesting. And Coal Dust is White. Anyone who's from this area knows that it's a very big coal region.
Right.
So I would imagine it's because of where you lived. You lived in 44.
Exactly.
You were inspired, I guess, a little bit by this topic. Can you tell me, why don't we start with what gave you the idea to do this particular story?
Well, I have to go back to, I guess, 1959. I think that was right after the Knox coal disaster, when the river caved in. And at that time, I was in the hardware business, running a family hardware store. My father had died a couple of years earlier, and I was married with 3 little kids, 1, 3, and 5.
Wow. And
I was struggling to make a living. So in frustration, I began writing. And what I did, instead of go out drinking, carousing, anyway, I created my alter ego, and that was George Walsh. He was single, I was married. He was a nice head of hair, I was losing mine, and he was making a good living, and I was struggling. So he was doing things that I couldn't do or wouldn't do. So that's how the story got started. And once I got the story started, I realized I had to go back and create George Walsh's family. So then I went back to 1890, and I created the 2 families, 2 Welsh coal mining families. One was George's grandfather, the Walsh family, and the other was neighbors, the Richards family. They both come over to America on the same boat. George's family, or George's grandfather, is going to Chicago, where he's going to help his elderly uncle operate a neighborhood grocery store. And the Richards family, they're coming to Coal City, which is really our area in northeastern Pennsylvania. He's a coal miner in Wales, and he's going to continue coal mining in this northeast Pennsylvania. Well, what happens is that the first part of the book, I follow from 1890 to 1920, the 2 families in tandem of how they're keeping in contact and their struggles and how they're doing. Then I branch off from 1920 to 1955 with the Walsh family and how what George is doing and his family is doing. He's born in 1925, incidentally.
So he was like your contemporary.
Right, exactly. And then the next part goes to the Richards family from 1920 to 1955. Now, in 1955, George's company transfers him to Coal City, Pennsylvania, northeast Pennsylvania. Now, the question is, does he meet the younger generations of the Richards family? And that's basically what the story is. Now, I don't want to give too much away.
No,
because,
you want them to buy the book.
That's right. Buy the book, and you'll get to know exactly what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned their Welsh. You had to bring his family. You had to create these characters. How did you come up with that? Did you know people that inspired you that had families that came over, or did you research some families like that?
Well, I did, but there were some Welsh coal mining families that I knew, so I created them, and I used some of our friends' first names. Also.
You did? Okay.
Yeah. So that made it more interesting as far as I was concerned, and it went from there. One of the questions that's asked me is the title, "Coal Dust is White."
Yeah, that's an interesting title. How did you come up with that?
Now, coal dust, we all know coal dust is black.
Yeah.
And the coal dust is white is a metaphor. In other words, we don't mean it to be white. We know it's black. And it has to do, the only way you could get coal dust to be to be white would be to purify it some way. And this has to do with the purification of the soul. And that's where the atonement comes in, which is at the end of the book, because a lot of these people are naughty people.
Oh, okay.
So that's where I came up with the title.
That's very interesting. Now, would you say, I know you said that he was like an alter ego for you, George.
Right.
Was it your way kind of like an outlet? You were having a little fun while you were writing there?
That's exactly what happened. Yeah. I was really getting rid of my frustration, because here it was a guy that was successful, you know, and doing well, and I was struggling. So it kind of was sort of therapy, I guess.
Yeah.
You know?
Now, how did you manage to do that with a business and 3 kids? Were you writing at night instead of sleeping, or what were you doing?
Well, that's exactly what happened. I was writing at night. I was writing weekends, and I remember now when President Kennedy was running for election in September, October, November, in that 1960, I was in the Nesbitt Hospital in Kingston, because I had put myself in a situation where I just wasn't getting enough rest, and I guess I had pneumonia or something. I knew I was sick. So, but I did, then after that I controlled my, the time I was running. Because what happens, a lot of ideas come in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't fall asleep, and all of a sudden a solution to a problem will come up. So I did a lot of that.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Time.
Especially writing, you have to write it when it comes to you.
Yeah.
Now, how did you know that you could even write? Did you have a feeling, or because you didn't have like a background in it, right?
No, I didn't take journalism in college, but I was exposed to books all of my life. We always had books growing up. I used to read the kids books, the Bobbsey twins, that sort of thing. And then in high school, Richard Halliburton, I remember. And in college, there was books. And even when I was in the Army, we were given pocketbooks. And in the Army, there's a lot of hurry up and wait time. You know, if you're in the mess line waiting to eat chow, or lunch, or breakfast, whatever it is, there's always a line. So you pick out your pocketbook, which we have these big fatigue pockets, you know, and you'd read. So I did a lot of reading. And then when I graduated college, I got the Book of the Month Club. So there was always reading material. So I was familiar with the format. And I like to write anyway. I was, as a matter of fact, I have, when I went away to college in 1942, I used to write letters home. And when I went in the Army in 1943, I wrote letters home. And we have all those letters.
Oh, wow.
That I think I might put on the blog.
That would be great.
Yeah, there's 300-400 of them.
Wow.
So that's, they say I was used to writing, so it came kind of
naturally to you.
Yeah.
Now, what's so interesting about the book is that you started it, you said, is it 1959?
1959.
You actually started it, but then you put it away.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What happened that caused you to put it
Okay.
away and then bring it back out again?
In 1961 was the last year I was writing. I had an opportunity at that point to get a job with a CPA firm. He needed help during the tax season. So in 1962, 63, and 64, I worked part-time during the tax season, and then I was studying, I was really refreshing myself in accounting and taxes at that point. So they finally offered me a full-time job in 1965 after that last tax season. So the novel was put aside. I'd never finished it. And it was just put aside and put in the filing cabinet. And I devoted myself to the accounting, and let's see, 1971, I became a certified public accountant at the age of 49.
Wow.
I used to say I was the oldest new CPA.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, it worked out fine, because I've had, as a matter of fact, the store got flooded out in '72. I had no more hardware business, so
it was a good transition.
Yeah,
you had the family hardware store, and then you went to accounting.
Went to accounting.
Now, tell me, your writings were somewhat affected also by the flood, right? The Agnes flood? Where they were tucked away?
Okay, the book, when we were cleaning up after the flood, I put the manuscript in a filing cabinet.
Okay.
And we were cleaning up. I found the manuscript intact, waterlogged, but intact.
Wow.
I dried out the pages, and I put in plastic folders, each page in a folder, and I put it back in the cabinet again. And then in Father's Day in 1960, I'm sorry, 2010.
2010, okay.
About 50 years off here. My two daughters were in, and we were talking about books, and they said, and they know I like to read, so or write, and they said, Dad, why don't you write a book? And I said, I did. And they said, do you have it? I said, I think so. And sure enough, I went back into the cabinet, and it was there. And they said, why don't you type it on the computer and see what it looks like? And then the whole thing evolved after that.
So your children didn't know that you had written this?
No, no.
Did your wife know?
No, she never knew either.
Wow.
She was as surprised as anybody. She
So
says,
what did they think you were doing?
Well, I guess I had a separate room, I guess sort of a den, you know, I was writing
They were giving you your
there.
space, yeah.
Yeah, and she didn't know what I was doing. She might have thought I was writing letters or something.
Yeah.
I never said anything to anybody.
Wow.
Really.
So
Yeah.
that was like, it really was your kind of outlet, and
Right,
that was
exactly,
your thing. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. Otherwise,
So that caused you to bring it back out in 2010. So did you just pick up where you left off, or?
well, what happened when I was typing it on the computer, I did not have a conclusion to the story.
Okay.
So at that time, I got one of these epiphany, I guess is what you might describe it, and I did come to a conclusion. Now, since that time, when I began the final editing with the publishing company, we came up with about 450 developmental edits, quality edits, and cosmetic edits.
Wow.
So it's a lot changed. The book is a lot changed from the manuscript that I found after that Father's Day.
Okay.
That I typed at that time.
Okay, so when it actually then was finished just recently, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it was finished. I'm thinking of the date. Yeah, less than a year ago.
Less than a year ago.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
so now you have it on Amazon.com.
Right.
You can get it through Barnes & Noble
Barnes &
as
Noble.
well. And I think, did you mention some of Abbott Press?
Abbott Press.
Abbott Press, okay.
The publisher.
Okay, and it's a great, now would you say that, obviously it's not just about the coal region, so you certainly don't have to be from northeastern Pennsylvania to enjoy the story.
No, no, you can, no matter where you're from. And there's a lot of messages that I was trying to tell people. I have about 16 questions, you know, that absolute power corrupts absolutely, you know, what did that happen, or what person did that happen to? And don't try to make your children into your own image, and what characters had that problem, or who did what. Don't be judgmental. There's a lot of learning involved in the book. It's like
Sounds like everyone needs this then.
that's right. It's really like a textbook.